I think, servant leadership. What do you mean by that?
Well, I contrast servant leadership with what the kind of leadership we frequently get, which is self-aggrandizement. Just people trying to get as much money, as big a hogs at the trough, trying to get as big a meal as they possibly can get, and the way business is often caricatured by its enemies. So the servant leader turns that on its head and says, I'm in here, I'm serving the higher purpose of this organization. I've internalized that higher purpose, I made it my own, and I'm serving all the stakeholders. I want all the stakeholders to flourish, and I'm in service to them. Those are the two biggest parts of it, and then our world is crying out for more conscious leaders. It really is. If we're going to get through the polarities that we have politically and a lot of the challenges that we have, we need leadership to resonate at this higher level. And so two of my friends and I have started, in fact, one of the things I have to do when we finish here is we've got a book proposal out called 12 Virtues of a Conscious Leader. And that's going to be like a sequel to Conscious Capitalism. We have 2 chapters in leadership and conscious capitalism, and people tell me those are their favorite chapters. So it's like, okay, we're going to expand those into a full-scale book, and we're talking about the virtues that you want conscious leaders to cultivate, that you have to practice virtues. I mean, some of these are timeless virtues, like you cultivate courage, integrity in all things, dare to love. I mean, but then also about the importance of customers, put customers first. Today, in the technology world we live in, you have to learn how to think exponentially. So we're just going to have a chapter on each one of these 12 virtues and give ways for people to understand what that virtue is and how do they practice it daily. To be a servant leader or to be a highly ethical human being today, you have to practice it. It doesn't just automatic. To be a good leader, you got to study it. You got to practice it. You got to work at it. It's not just, leaders they're made. They're not born. People might have a natural desire to be leaders when they're kids, but that doesn't mean they're any skillful at it. Good leaders are skillful leaders, and that takes practice, particularly practice of virtues.
It's interesting, being on the other side of conscious capitalism, meaning, I'm the recipient of being in an entrepreneurial community who, joined conscious capitalism, studied it, and the things you were talking about. And I think the excitement amongst my peers, other entrepreneurs, other business owners, et cetera, was the idea of a moral sanction in what we were doing, as compared to feeling like we're either greedy because we want to succeed and expand our companies, et cetera.
We're the heroes, Patrick. We're not the bad guys. We're the heroes. We're the ones. That doesn't make us better than other people. It's just the calling of leadership is to help elevate humanity, and you got to answer the call. And I think that is part of the community, is recognizing that we have a special role to play. We can help make the world a better place, and let's get on with it.
What do you want your biggest legacy to be after all these decades of what you've done in the world?
I think one way to understand it is that, because I have people come up all the time and say, man, you've done so many amazing things, you must be so proud. And I say, I don't think about it. It's like the fun part in business is not what you have done, it's what you're going to do. The creative process is what's fun. If you ask an artist like Picasso, he didn't care about his old paintings. It's what he was working on right then and there. The projects that we throw ourselves into is what gives our life meaning. And I mean, someday, maybe, I hope never, I hope I actually die working on projects. But possibly someday, I got nothing else going on, I'll look back and say it's been a pretty good life. But right now I'm too busy living it, too busy creating the next big thing that I'm excited about. I think that's the key to, I think that's one of the keys to happiness, is to be alive, to be creative, to be engaged. And so then legacy is not something I have time to think about. Somebody else can think about it if I have a worthwhile legacy after I'm gone. I'm not too worried about it right now. So I believe the engaged life, the purposeful life, for me, is the life that's led to great happiness. And I actually think most people would be happier if they're doing meaningful things they care about.
You mentioned 2008 and how that was kind of a tough time. Are there any other low points? I mean, all entrepreneurs I think go through them, and they have to try to find some inspiration to get through them.
Oh man, I mean, remember I've got 40 years now, so there have been a ton of low points. I mean, most recently it was a low point when our same-store sales, our comps went negative, and we got shareholder activists that were trying to throw out our board, throw me out, take over the company, and then sell it to Albertsons or Kroger or somebody like that. The Amazon solution, they were the perfect fit for us, but that was a low point that we ended up having an elegant solution for, the merger with Amazon. So that was definitely a low point. I mean, those guys launched their attack on Whole Foods the day I released my second book 16 months ago called The Whole Foods Diet. And that wasn't an accident. They immediately said, look at this guy, he's on a book tour, he's not running the company.
Wow.
So I had to stop the book tour, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, well, early on we had our flood, and when the first year we relocated Saferway and we opened the first Whole Foods market, as I said, it became the highest sales natural food store in the United States within just a few months.
Right.
And then 9 months after we opened, Austin had a 100-year flood. And we were in the flood zone. We had 8 feet of water in our store. We were literally out of business. We were washed down into the river. And that was definitely a low point. But we didn't die, even though we didn't have insurance. That's when I really first began to understand about stakeholders. I didn't have a word for it then. But the next day after the flood, we showed up to start cleaning up the mess, not knowing whether we didn't have enough money to buy new inventory or anything. But there were all these sort of semi-strangers. I kind of knew them, but they didn't work for Whole Foods, that were there cleaning up the store with us.
Wow.
And then as we found out, they were our customers and they were our neighbors. And they just loved Whole Foods, so they were going to pitch in and help. And a lot of those people pitched in and helped all the way until we got reopened a month later. We had our suppliers fronted us new inventory, even though they weren't, on credit, which we didn't really have the money to pay them if we didn't get the business back going again. Our stakeholders literally didn't let us die. They rebirthed us. So that's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about stakeholder philosophy. But that was a low point because I thought we were dead. I was wondering what I was going to do next. And then over the years, there have been a couple of coups or attempted coups that failed, where they tried to had ambitious executives teaming up with dissident directors of the board who thought my time was over. I mean, if you're an outspoken entrepreneur who thinks out of the box, you're not conventional, and that always irritates certain people. And when you're doing well, they credit you with a certain visionary genius. But when the business is doing poorly, they think it's time for you to go because you've lost your magic touch. So I had to weather a couple of those in the 40-year period as well. And, I mean, there's personal stuff that happens, and tragedies occur, and people you love die, and lots of low periods. But I mean, entrepreneurs are sort of inherently optimistic people, or they would never start a business.
Right.
The odds against them are huge. I've always been very optimistic and very resilient. I tend to bounce back quickly. I wake up the next day and you figure out, okay, how are we going to solve this problem? What are we going to do? And you do it.